Hey everyone, I'm going to be making single oil soaps today just to test out what they look like, how a fragrance handles it, how they end up curing, what they look like in the end, and all that stuff. Sorry, I stopped the video prematurely because I have some severe ADD and I was too focused on the background of the video rather than what I was telling you. So anyway, I'm going to be making single oil soaps today, and they're the common soap oils that you can get at the grocery store. So just so you can see what they look like, the importance of a formulation to create a good consistency soap, and I'm going to use a single fragrance and see what it looks like in each one and how the fragrance holds up in each one, etc., etc. So anyway, sorry about that. Here we go. So the first thing I'd like to do is make some 50% lye solution, and to do that I'm just going to be using this simple round bottom flask. I don't know if you can get these on Amazon. This is actually a scientific piece of glassware, but if I can find it, I will link it in the description. And I really like these because it's got a very narrow opening, so for fumes and such it's easy to cover without having like a screw-on cap or anything like that. All you really need to do is take a piece of cling wrap and just put it over the top. So anyway, I'm going to be making a 50% lye solution here, and I don't need a whole lot. So I was thinking I would just make a maybe a 5 ounce. So I'm going to be weighing out 5 ounces of water. It does sound like a lot of lye relative to the water, but that's the whole purpose of a 50% solution. So anyway, the reason I'm making up this solution now is because usually what I do is I like to add all those different things, which another video I can link. I like to add all those other things to my lye solution, like the sodium lactate and the silk and sometimes sugar and citric acid. But for the purposes of this experiment, I am just using lye and water, nothing else, no additives, no beer, no clay, nothing. I just want to see what the oil itself looks like with lye and a fragrance that I know behaves very well and doesn't, destroy the recipe. So I'm going to use a Dixie cup to measure it out. 5 ounces of lye. So I had about 5.1 ounces of water in there, and I got exactly 5.1 ounces of lye. So hooray! That's a 50-50 solution. It doesn't matter how many decimals you go out, as long as they're the same on both sides. That's all that matters. So this is going to get really, really warm because it's the nature of lye, and this is why I really like these round bottom flasks, is because, again, the fumes only have one little outlet that I can just staunch right there, and then use the round bottom to swirl. And because it's got this narrow neck, when you swirl like this, there's less of a risk that liquid will fly out the top. But anyway, like I said, this is a scientific instrument, so if I can find one on Amazon, I will link it below. I have had this round bottom flask for 20 years. I am not kidding. This thing is a trooper. So that is really, really, really warm right there. So while this is going to, dissolve and then cool down, I'm going to measure out all the different oils that I am wanting to use. So before we get started on actually adding our lye to the oils and doing the whole thing, I want to explain to you how I'm going to add everything. So first things first, I labeled my mold with all the different oils that I'm testing out. So that's sitting off to the side ready. I have pre-measured out into this little disposable container, but I am cheap, so I wash these out. But this little disposable container full of my fragrance oil, which again is this pink grapefruit from Wholesale Supplies Plus, which is a tried and true, very well-behaving fragrance, and it's I would love to test its longevity in either one of these oils. So I have that here. I'm going to be adding about roughly 3 mils of fragrance to each thing. I did not calculate out what that is, but it's to 3 ounces of oil, 3 mils, it's not much. So anyway, but this is still very warm, my lye, but it is dissolved. So what I like to do when I'm doing this 50% is weigh it out into a separate vessel, give it a little bit more breathing room to cool down, because for each one of these recipes, we're not going to be using a whole lot. I pre-calculated everything out, and for my coconut oil, and especially with the 20% discount, I'm only adding 0.88 ounces of this lye to my total thing. So anyway, with that being said, because this is a 50% solution of lye and the recipe does require a certain amount of water, in my case it's the 25% ratio, I do have to add a little bit of water to my final lye solution. So I have my water here, and I have them in 2 different sizes so I don't get them mixed up. I mean, right now the lye is clearly a little bit cloudier, so you can tell, but as it cools down, it'll be clearer just like this. So just to keep them separate, and I don't mark up my beakers, I do have different sizes that I'm using. So I don't know if anyone cares about that, but that's what I do. So I'm going to be using this little plastic cup as my mixing vessel, and I'm not too fond of that, but it's just a temporary thing. I had another beaker like this glass, but I broke it. So I'm going to be using this plastic one. So I'm going to pre-weigh out everything. Like I said, I need 0.88 ounces of this 50% solution. And then based on my calculations, I have to add in another 0.35 ounces. So a little over a whole ounce of liquid is going to be going into my dissolved, or my melted, not dissolved, my melted oils. So 0.88. Now my scale does not measure in eighths. It only goes 5s and 10th. So I'm going to do 0.85 and a few drops. And now I'm going to be adding my 0.35. So I'll go ahead and tare 0.35. I don't want to skew my results here. I'm going to go ahead and get a dropper, because this is not as much at all. And there's my 0.35. I can, I'm coughing because I am breathing in some fumes right now. So basically when I added that water, it like reactivated the the exothermic reaction. So it is putting off fumes. So I covered it with a little saran wrap. You can get a mask if you want. I just feel like with fumes, it's easier to cover it with something that's non-permeable. So while over time plastic will be permeable, those little masks that you get, it'll go right through those unless it's super thick. I used to, back in the day, take a folded up towel, and I'm talking like a thick towel, and put it over my face, or will hold it to my mouth like a cloth, you know, but it's really hard to breathe that way. So anyway, that's what I'm doing, and I can feel the heat in that there. That's pre-measured, and my coconut oil should be ready, so I will go get it. I love the clarity of coconut oil. It is so nice for colors, and you know, because it just doesn't impart any kind of color to it. So you can see like canola oil is yellow, even castor oil is somewhat yellow. Lard will be yellow because even the chunks themselves are yellow, but coconut oil is super white. Or I guess I should say super clear, because white, you know, implies that it's opaque, and it's not. And something's going on with my laser thermometer. It keeps switching over to centigrade, which I do Fahrenheit. So sorry for my European friends, but I can read things in Celsius, but for whatever reason, I can only comprehend Celsius when I'm in the lab. For home stuff, I can only comprehend Fahrenheit. I don't know why my brain is broken, but that is just how I do things. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add my fragrance. So I told you I'm gonna add about 3 mils. One of these pipettes is about 3 mils when you take it up to about there. I don't know if you can see that, but that's about 3 mils right there. And we're not being exact here. I'm just being approximate, as long as I'm being approximate consistently along all my recipe, or all my soaps here. Now the pink grapefruit fragrance oil doesn't have a whole lot of color. I mean, you can see that it's pretty yellow, but relatively speaking, like the more vanilla that you have in a soap, or the more vanilla you have in a fragrance oil, the browner it's gonna be. Grapefruit is not vanilla at all, so it's a pale yellow, and you can't really get away from that. There aren't a whole lot of fragrances that are crystal clear. So I say all that because it did turn my nice clear coconut oil that I was going on about a very, very light shade of yellow, but it doesn't matter in the end, because, you know, once it cures, it's going to be like just a very, very white, hard bar of soap. So, all right, we'll just wait for things to cool down, and then we'll add. So hold tight. All right, so our solution is cooled down satisfactorily. And now I'm going to mix these two together. I can't use a stick blender because there's not enough solution to submerge it. So I do have this little thing here that I've had since the dawn of time. Pretty much, I don't know, this is like pretty much a 20-year-old little instrument that I've had. I can see there's still even like some silk stuck to it. I'm gonna get that off here real quick. But anyway, so yeah, I've mixed paint with it, you know, just all kinds of stuff. It's a little powerhouse. And back in the day, I think I got it for like $8. But anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and mix here, and keep note that this spoon is stainless, even though the handle is plastic. You can see that it broke off here, but it is stainless, so no aluminum allowed. In case you didn't know this, coconut oil takes forever to trace. So in this case here, I am just going to mix it up as much as I can, let it sit for a little bit, mix it up, let it sit, and do my other oils here in the meantime. But I don't know what it is about coconut oil, but one time it took me like 45 minutes to get it to trace. So I'm not going to sit here and have you watch me for 45 minutes trying to mix this up. So yeah, anyway. So while we wait for that, we're going to mix up our next batch. So I'm going to set that to the side, away from any ledges so it doesn't fall off. We'll go ahead and do our lard. So the lard still has bits of bacon in it. I'll filter these out. Go ahead and do that here. I rendered it as best as I could, but you know, you can never get it perfect. See a little bacon pieces? You are tasty. I do have quite a bit of oil sticking to the side, so this will take me just a second to scrape everything down, because I will tell you that it does make a huge difference, especially when you're only dealing with amounts like 3 ounces. Just this little bit sticking to the side can make make a huge difference, especially with your lye concentration. You don't want your final product to be too lye heavy, and I want this to be as accurate to each other as possible. So got my bacon pieces filtered out. Now we got nothing but good old lard. And this one, I didn't melt down entirely, so it might still be pretty, well, it's still telling me it's 132, so all right then. Same thing that we did before, I'm gonna measure out my 50% lye solution and add the extra water. For lard, it's 0.82, and like I said, my scale only does 0.510, well, 0.5, and so I'm just gonna do 0.8. And same thing, I need to add an extra 0.35 of water. There's the fumes again, so I'm going to cover her up, give her a stir. And like I said, even though this 50% that I poured in this separate vessel is getting to room temperature, because I added that extra water to this, it like reactivated the process, so now it's warming up again. So just like before with the coconut, I'm going to have to wait until this cools down a little bit. In the meantime, I'll add my 3 mils of fragrance. May as well just do that now while I'm here. So if we remember, we go up to about that mark. Bacon and grapefruit. Let's check on our coconut oil here, and look at this. We're still sitting here, unemulsed, unimpressed. No, I love coconut oil soap. It just takes forever to trace. All right, we have cooled down, and we're going to be adding the lye. And while I was waiting for this, I gave my coconut oil another shot of mixing, and it's still sitting there, just not tracing. So lard is also a finicky beast. I've noticed it slows down my recipes quite a bit, but I think on its own it should still trace normally, or like not like fast or anything like that, but just in a normal, like reasonable amount of time, not 45 minutes. So I'm gonna give it a shot with this. And you know, to be fair, this little guy here is not a stick blender. It's not gonna have the same power behind it to create that high shear that that a stick blender does. It does mix it. It's good for lotions and emulsifying that way as well. This thing is, that is. But ultimately, you know, for soap making, the shear you need from the stick blender is unmatched. But I can see that it's thickening up a little bit, and there's a little piece of bacon that made it through the mesh. So you get to little piece of bacon, you get to undergo saponification. But you don't have to make your own lard. You can, you know, in my budget recipe video, I do buy some lard from the grocery store. You can get it. It's the same teal box it's always been in for years and years and years, and you can find it in the meat section. So if you go to your, you know, local grocery store, go to your meat section. I know Walmart has it. You'll see it there. It's called manteca. I think that's what it's called. At least that's what I remember. But I can feel this is a little bit thicker than my coconut friend, but it's still not tracing like I want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and weigh out my next batch of lye for the castor oil. So I'll let my lard sit to the side. That way I can give the lye time to cool down while I wait for these guys to trace. So for my castor oil, I'm going to be putting in 0.74 ounces. So in this case, I'm just going to be putting in 0.75, which is a little bit more, but that's okay. Okay, and then I'm going to add an extra 0.35. Don't want to be breathing in the fumes. I'll set that aside for my castor. Put it next to my castor. I'm losing bench space here. All right, my lard is starting to get a little bit thicker. It's still considered probably just emulsed, so it's not traced yet, but when you're doing some soap designs, it's good to have your recipe, depending on how intricate your design is, it's good to have some recipes at that just emulsed phase, which would be this. But I want this a little bit thicker because I don't want it to, I want to make sure that it won't separate or do anything weird in my mold. And I'm going to be treating this like an in the oven process. So my mold here, I have it sitting on top of another mold so that when I go to pick it up, it's not going to like spill everywhere. And yeah, so anyway, the silicone molds tend to, unless you get like a really stiff one, they tend to bend when they fill. And you don't want a soapy mess everywhere, especially with all that hard work you just did. And just another peek at the coconut, you can see that it's still very thin, very drippy. We'll get there. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pour my lard one into the mold because it hasn't changed. I've hit it with the mixer and you can usually tell if it's not emulsed because you'll see some oil trails in the vortex and all that stuff. But this one here has not changed. It's just taking its time going to trace. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour it into my lard cavity. So usually what I like to do with the extra is pour it into another mold. I do like pouring it thin trace just because it's just, I don't know, it just pours better, it lays flatter. You don't have to worry about too many bubbles on the inside. I mean, granted, this has like mixing bubbles in it, but not like pockets where there's like, you know, it got hard or really thick. Let's see if I can spray some of these bubbles away. Okay, so I'm still waiting for my coconut. I'm gonna go ahead and do my castor. So my castor oil sat at room temperature, so there's no like temperature issues with it, which is real nice. Makes it go by a little bit faster. And I've never done castor on its own, so I don't know what to expect. Oh, I forgot to add the fragrance. Gotta add the fragrance. 3 mils. Right up to there. All right. Castor oil on its own is very thick. You can kind of see here it looks, I mean, it's almost like a little bit like watered down honey, kinda. And it doesn't look like it's taking much for me to get it to emulse. I'm just stirring it by hand. So it is, I wouldn't say it's tracing, but it's reacting without the mixer. So that tells you that this, oh yeah, that's beautiful. This castor oil will trace pretty fast. So earlier when I was saying it's good to have a nice blend of oils in your recipe, this is why. So you got your coconut that sits there and takes forever. You got this that traces relatively fast. And then, you know, whatever. But it's not all about trace either. It's definitely about the properties of the soap. Because coconut oil is the bubbles, castor oil is notoriously good for hair and skin because of its oil, or I guess triglyceride profile. Go ahead and pour this because it's getting thick. See, even my lard is still sitting there real thin. I wasn't sure how much oil to weigh out for this particular mold, so I just erred on the side of caution and just did 3 ounces of oil. Turned out to be a pretty decent guess. I do have some extra, but it's not like crazy extra. But you can even see like a good difference in the color too. So like castor, I don't know if the camera is really picking that up, but the castor is a lot more translucent yellow versus the lard, which is more opaque beige. So it's pretty cool. So before I forget the fragrance again, I'm gonna go ahead and add it to my canola. So doing my 3 mils in the canola you go. And I didn't even have time to mix my next round of lye. So I'm gonna do that now. So for castor, I need to do, I'm sorry, for canola, we're not doing castor. For canola, I need 0.78, so I'm gonna do 0.8. Perfect. I need to add 0.35 water. I'm wearing my safety glasses too, just FYI. Okay, and since that's the final oil that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start cleaning up here. I still have quite a bit of extra of the 50% lye left over, which I can use for other oils in the future. But one thing to note too is like it's good to keep this in a sealed container, because this little extra thing that I had sitting out with the open container, you can see there's a residue on the side, because what's happening is that extra lye is reacting with the air to create a sodium salt on the surface. I guess that's kind of vague, like there's a lot of sodium salts, but this is, I don't want my lye to get ruined, so I keep it in a bottle. Anyway, so here's my coconut. It's still drippy, but it is getting thicker. So I'm gonna wait on that a little bit longer. Okay, so now this is my canola oil. Look how interesting that is. Like I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it's very yellow. And it could be the fragrance oil mixing with this particular oil's triglyceride profile. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Some oils, I will say, do, and when I say oils, gosh, I can't be positive that it's the oil itself or the fragrance. You know, in this particular case, it's not the fragrance because I'm using it in everything. So, well, okay, I take that back. It could be the fragrance, again, interacting with the canola oil itself. But sometimes I've run into some recipes where I've mixed the fragrance in and it turned like super yellow and my colors got all yellow and weird, and I was disappointed because I was like, man, I really wanted a specific color, like a bright pink or, you know, something, and it turned out orange. But once it was done gelling and I was able to cut it, it was like it had gone back to normal. So sometimes you just have to like trust the process and just let it happen and then see what happens. So I feel like I've done canola oil on its own before, and I have an idea of what might happen, but I think this yellow color will go away. It may not go away entirely, but I think it will go away. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pour my coconut. It hasn't changed. It's still, I think it's in the emulsed phase right now. I can't really express to you through the camera, you know, how it feels, because it does feel thicker. You know, it's kind of like half and half maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like heavy cream, but it's getting there. Let me put it that way. Maybe it is kind of more like heavy cream. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour it. I think in the future too, if I, you know, use this mold for experiments, it'll probably be 2.5 ounces of oil instead of 3. But 3 is a nice like round-ish number, or whole number to work with. So that's what I did. Coconut oil, done. So here's the canola. It's also still very liquid, but just like the coconut, it hasn't changed. So it's emulsed. It's just taking its time going to trace. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour it as well. And the lard was the same way too. And you can see I accidentally stuck my finger in it, but you can see it is getting more solid. So there's no separation or anything going on there. And that's what you don't want separation. So you want to make sure that your formula comes to emulsion at least, so that it doesn't separate. So as long as it's not changing while you're mixing it, like you don't see the oil trails or anything like that, it's emulsed. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour my canola, and just like the castor, it's pretty yellow. It's even slightly yellower, but not a ton. But boy, when I first mixed that lye, it got like real yellow, and then it kind of mellowed out. And that's kind of what I mean, or what I meant earlier, when like sometimes you just kind of have to trust the process. And, you know, I imagine that eventually, when this is all said and done, that the final product is not going to be that yellow, but I could be wrong. It could be that yellow. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and put this in a crock pot with this other mold underneath it. So you can see it's even like wiggling a little bit. I don't want to spill it. So, anyway, but that's the purpose of this thing underneath. And then I'm gonna let it in the oven, in the mold oven process. C-pop, I guess is what it's called. I don't know. I don't call it anything. But anyway, that's what I'm gonna do. And I will return with the results when everything solidifies. All right, so here's the next day. This is the canola oil. It did not set up in the mold, so when I pulled it out of my crock pot, it was very liquidy, but it's got like a kind of a pudding-like consistency. But these are the other ones. They are pretty hard. The castor oil was very solid. The coconut is very solid. The lard had a little bit of a give to it, but it was still pretty solid. And you can see the color differences in all of those soaps. The coconut is pretty bright white. And this is my lather test for the coconut. So you'll see as I whip it around in my hands that the bubbles are really big and fluffy. So here in just a second, you'll see the coconut makes some really big ones that you can actually gather in your hands. But the downside with coconut is that it is very drying because it is so cleansing. Now, the lard soap is a little bit different. It had some lather, but not nearly as much as the coconut. You can see in the difference here that the lather is very small, if you can even call it a lather, but it's there. The difference is this soap felt less drying, softer, I guess you could say. And the castor oil soap is very interesting because there was zero lather whatsoever in this bar, but the feel of it was very silky, and there is a reason why people use this in their hair, because there is science to support that it is very conditioning of a oil to use in soap. So the following week, I checked on my canola soap and it had hardened in there, but since I couldn't get it out to do the lather test, I used my little puck here. And honestly, I was a little bit surprised at how lathering the canola on its own was. Now, I've used canola for a while in soap, but I didn't realize how much it contributed to the actual lather. So here it is. It's more of a dense foam, but there is a foam, and it's it was also silky like the castor, but there was a foam to it versus the castor. So this just illustrates the importance in blending for your soap recipes. But that's it for this round of single oil soap making, and maybe I'll do another one in the future with other oils. But if you have any questions or you have a similar experience with any of this, please leave me a comment. And I would love to see you over at my newsletter at reholdingauthor.com, where I post soap and book related stuff. And there is currently a giveaway going on right now where I am gonna do a drawing for 3 of my books and 3 different soapy gifts. So click the link in the description for that Google form and fill it out, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!